The Senator from Western Fairfax County, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rise for a point of personal privilege.
The Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is Black History Month. You know, it's a time when we celebrate the accomplishments and the achievements of individuals who did so under very difficult and sometimes almost impossible circumstances. But for me, it's also important because it brings back a number of unresolved childhood memories from the days of segregation. I grew up in an 1890s era elementary school in Fairfax County that had been converted to a home in 1932, also a small farm. But there was an African-American neighborhood just down and across the street from me whose ancestors never attended that school and whose current residents did not attend the brand new school that I attended, that I started in 1954. My school was in Annandale, just a mile away. Theirs was in Falls Church, a considerably longer drive. As a child, it never occurred to me why they didn't go to my new school that had just been built. It never occurred to me to ask why they lived on dirt roads, not paved ones, and why they had no indoor plumbing or had to draw their water from a spring. And when the McWilliams family, who lived in that community, lost their 2-year-old child in a fire, it never occurred to me to think that they lived in a fire trap and that tragedy was inevitable. After graduating from college in 1970, I became a juvenile probation officer, and in conducting investigations of children and families, I did many social histories on African-American families. I was made aware of what life was like in Fairfax County back in days of segregation. Students having to get up at 5 in the morning to get to a school not a few miles away, but in a county, an adjacent county, where the ride took and approached almost 2 hours because they had so many stops to make to get their students there. Shopping was difficult, services were difficult, doctors were difficult to get to. There were huge barriers and limited options. I also learned that this small community, which is now a row of medical offices that many in Fairfax County and certainly here in this chamber from Fairfax County have gone to visit their doctors in, has replaced that community. And I learned that this land was given to them and deeded over by George Washington. You know, my high school integrated in 1965, and it went very smoothly. As students, we never thought much about it. But this was 11 years after Brown versus Board of Education before we integrated. While this spoke to our innocence and lack of bias, it also spoke to our lack of awareness and our sense of social justice as young people. You know, Mr. President, in 15 to 20 years, there's going to be no one in this chamber who remembers actively living during the era of segregation. That's why Black History Month is so important, because it's a time to remember that there was a time we should never forget. Thank you, Mr. President.